Hello.
Hey, Tim or Caroline, wave if you can hear me. All right. This is Chris. I don't have video again.
Excellent. Just want to make sure I sound better. Last time, I think you guys were having a hard time hearing me. If this is helping, I'll wear the headphones.
I would say you're pretty clear. I think better than I recall.
Nice and clear, Tim.
All right, then I will stick with the headphones.
Hey, Tim,
Yes, Bill.
Michael was going to come because he can't make his stuff work. He was going to come and attend the meeting, and then he backed out. So Michael won't be in attendance.
Okay. Candy Pratt also is not going to be in attendance, so we need one more person at least to get this started. So let me run through, see who's here.
Chris Carpus said he was trying to dial in now.
Okay.
Mr. Carpus, are you with us now?
Yes, I am.
Excellent.
All righty.
Chris, I'm just going to start by saying that anybody who is on the meeting, if your case is not up for discussion, please put yourself on mute so that your background noise is not contributing to the overall meeting. Makes it extremely difficult when we have extra background noise coming from various places to be able to, tell what's actually going on, what's being said, and we'd like to give everybody a fair shot at being heard. So once again, just please, if you're not actively, your case is not actively being discussed, please put yourself on mute and we'll let you know when your case is up. All right? So Chris, I'll turn it over to you. It is 4:03 if you want to call the meeting to order.
All righty. We'll call the October 15th, 2020 meeting to order of the Town of Somerville's Commercial Design Review Board. And I think if the rest of the board members are okay, what I'm going to do is, when it comes to discussion, I was thinking maybe the better way to do it was to call on you in alphabetical order, at least for the vote. So that would be Bill Boshane, Chris Carpus. Well, the order I have on the list: Bill Boshane, Chris Carpus, Hart Weatherford, and then Carolyn Rogerson.
Is Hart on the meeting yet?
I thought I heard him.
We do have
Hart,
a quorum.
Okay, so Tim, with Bill, myself, Mr. Carpus, and Carolyn, we have a quorum?
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay. So we're going to go ahead and get moving then. So unless someone has an objection to the kind of the order, we'll get moving. So the first item we need to do is approval of the September 17th minutes. Is there a motion for approval?
Move we approve.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Carpus seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. There's no opposed. Okay. So the first order of business then is 113 North Magnolia Street. As the applicants kind of dial in or get engaged, just make sure you introduce yourself, please. And
Yes,
Tim, if you could also Tim, sorry, one more thing. Tim, if you feel appropriate, actually, I'd like you to kind of do not necessarily an intro, but kind of get them going, get it started.
Absolutely.
Okay.
This is a preliminary approval request for a new 5,660 square foot multi-tenant office building. As you can see from the staff report, the property is zoned DMX, which is downtown mixed use. All of the surrounding properties are zoned the same. The current use of the property is a residential use, and this was previously at the September 17th meeting for conceptual review. Staff has done their review of this, and the engineering department is still concerned about requesting some angled parking on North Magnolia Street. The engineering department is also requesting that the proposed sidewalks as shown on the plans extend the full width of the property on both Magnolia and First, as well as asking about having the proposed sidewalk on First Street be wholly placed within the right-of-way as opposed to straddling the property line. At this time, a photometric plan has not been submitted. And as noted on the prior staff report, the ground floor does not meet the 65% transparency requirement of section 4.2.9A. And this requirement can be waived by the board if they deem necessary. And just to get into the building a little bit, once again, it provides a mixture of exterior finishes, including vertical shiplap siding and brick. And we can kind of scroll through. What I did was this time I took some street views from Google just to give an idea as to what's going on in the neighborhood. This is the property here. This is a commercial building that already exists on the other side of the street. This is the commercial development, Magnolia Square, that was redeveloped recently, kitty corner from the existing property. So this is the site, demolition plan, and I'm just going to take it to a site plan real quick and turn it over to the applicant. And I believe I saw Cameron Baker on, and I can turn it over to him and his team and let them discuss the proposal.
Hello, this is actually David Thompson, the architect.
All right.
I'm going to lead the charge here. Cameron is with us, as is our client, David Willis, is in the meeting. I think the best thing to do is pick up where we left off at the last meeting. And I'll actually start with architecture, if we don't mind going to the floor plan A101.
Hold on just a second.
Sure, no problem. For me, the big takeaway from the last meeting was that there were board members who felt as though the architectural direction was too commercial and needed to lean in a more residential manner. It was also clear there were board members who did not agree with that. And I think that that's what boards are all about. Everybody's going to like every project or think that it's the right answer. And there's going to be dissent and disagreement, and that's okay. I don't think that it means that the most vocal opinion is where the vote lies. So I'm hoping there's as many champions to the project as there are folks that would like to see it go another way. That said, we really liked the building we presented last time. Our client liked it a lot. You know, to be frank, I think it's a better design than what we're bringing today, but we have taken to heart the comments, and we have presented a design that meets the intent and the provisions of the UDO, complies with staff recommendations, has been through the tree board, and we've made concessions to soften some of the commercial characteristics of the project. Starting with in plan view, one of the changes we made is in tenant B and tenant C. We had a much more exuberant entrances to those with a wood feature that projected and was angled. We've removed that feature and very much simplified those entrances. If we don't mind scrolling to our sheet with the 3D views, I think it's labeled, that's the one. This probably presents the majority of the changes best on the tenant A space, which is the taller volume towards the corner. On the upper view, it's page left. This is where we previously had a large scale, pretty contemporary entry feature that was in Corten steel. We have removed that, we think, in the spirit of softening the design. That was probably the most contemporary element on the building. So we have removed that and really downplayed the entrance to be simpler and just use the wood siding material. A couple of more subtle changes that we've made. We changed the storefront on the same facade to, instead of being a larger group of 4-pane storefront, we broke it into 2 windows that are the same scale as the windows running down side street. We have also added a water table so that we are in fact capturing a base, a middle, and a top to this building. So we, to sort of tie the 2 wings of the building together, we've carried over the brick from the tenant B and C space to create a water table for the tenant A space. Lastly, I heard during a different presentation some more unfavorable feelings about painted white brick, which is what we previously showed. So now we have changed the brick to be a gray brick, which would be used for the right-hand side of the building as well as the water table for the wood portion. We've done a couple of other refinements, including adjusting the proportion and the location of the awnings, a little bit more with the brick detailing on the parapets, which I think is very much in keeping with architectural traditions in Somerville and is completely appropriate for downtown. And then I'll address some of the site comments. From last meeting, we have removed 2 parking spaces, both of which were situated under the drip line of the tree. So to ease some of those concerns, we've reduced the parking count, although we clearly need to provide captured parking here for this to be a leasable, viable office space. We've also reduced the width of the drive aisle where it encroached under the drip line. We've pinched that a little bit to try to have as little impact as possible to be able to give that tree as much space as possible. And then to some of the staff recommendations from this meeting, just to address them head on, we can certainly, excuse me, I've got sirens in the background. We can certainly extend the sidewalk, the length of the property on the south side, which is the primary facade. It's not a request that we're going to be able to meet on the driveway side of the property because it will ultimately connect to a tree well for the tree save area for the second large tree. So happy to accommodate where we can, but in this situation, the tree is going to trump part of that request. We were also asked about placing the sidewalk completely in the right of way, which again, we've got a conflict there with the drainage swale, which is going to prevent us from doing that. And then lastly, we have studied the request for angled parking on Magnolia. We would not be able to provide that parking and conform with DOT requirements. So currently, we have not captured that request on plans. If there's any more specific questions or conversation we want to have about that, I'm sure Cameron can enlighten us further. But I'll keep it short. You know, we're very happy with this. We think we've made adjustments as needed that allow this to still be a commercial building that's appropriate, that aligns with the vision of the UDO. And we just feel very firmly that it doesn't need to look like an overscaled house. So we would ask for your support in moving this project forward.
All right, any initial comments from the board?
Oh, I can comment on the architecture. Chris Carpus. I agree with David. I agree with you. You know, when you look at, I like the changes that were made. It is softer. I mean, I think using that vertical siding softens it up a bit, and somebody's. And I know that Magnolia Square is kind of this gray box kind of thing. So anyway, I like the changes. I think the problem with the last one was that it was kind of contemporary, probably overly contemporary and gray, which kind of made it a little more stark than your revised submittal. And so the only thing I would say is I think that you'll probably have some joints, expansion joints, control joints, sorry, in the brick that will help to give it a little bit more of a vertical feel, just a little. But other than that, I find it to be okay. I think it meets the UDO. I don't have a problem with the 65% rule on this, because it looks to me like the windows are really proportionate to the surface area of the exterior elevation, and any more probably get to be questionable. So I'm okay with it. That's where I am.
Bill, do you have any comments?
I'm curious about the DOT requirements that would preclude on-street parking, because we did it at the other end of Magnolia Street without any problem a few years ago. So I don't what is the holdback with DOT about on-street parking?
Cameron, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I can elaborate. So just based on SCDOT standard detail, we don't have the width and the depth to accommodate the angled parking without pursuing a waiver or variance of some kind.
But what do you got there? 100-foot right away?
Well, the issue is for DOT standards, we need to be able to not back into the right of way, but back into a verge area before you get to the right of way, to the edge pavement, not right of way. Excuse me.
Okay, just work that out with the town engineering department.
Will do.
Yeah, so you could effectively leave it as is, correct?
What's that?
Yes.
You could leave it as is. I mean, people are already parked there.
Yeah. You could see in the Google Street View that there was actually some parking on the site that, informal parking. There wasn't any formal parking spaces. DMX does not specifically require on-site parking. It was staff's opinion that to be able to formalize some of that parking and make sure that they were getting the parking that they needed to accommodate the use that they were proposing. So it's always, trying to balance on-site and street parking, especially in areas like this, to get the best opportunity here.
All righty, Bill, do you have any other comments?
I'm fine with the building. I think you ought to work
Right.
with on-street parking.
Sure. Carolyn?
I wasn't in attendance at the last meeting, so I'm not sure what they originally presented. Um, is this the landscaping? This little fuzzy?
They present.
Um,
No,
Oh,
sorry.
yeah,
this
that's
is-
fine.
Did there be more landscaping?
There will be more landscaping, and a landscape plan was provided. We will adjust our renderings for the final to match the landscape plan, but there is more substantial landscape buffer between the sidewalk and the building than our rendering depicts. We just have not worked through specifics on that and coordinating it with, for instance, I want to work with Cameron on tree locations relative to windows, but there's more than that little bit of sea oats that I show.
The other comment I wanted to make is it just looks like one great big gray building. Is there any, and y'all might have talked about this, I'm not sure, variation on the color, like where the building is taller in one area and maybe the other area, or not? Is it just going to be the same colors all the way through?
We had previously shown white brick, which gave some contrast to the gray washed wood siding, which we would frankly be happy to go back to. I still like that. And I actually think it shows the brick detailing better because of the shadows it provides. We also previously had more wood element, and we had a Corten steel entry, which takes on kind of a rusty tone, which offered a different color. I think with what we've presented here, we're going to get our color through the landscaping more than anything, to be honest. Signage will develop at some point, but we've really taken, as the second pass, a much more neutral tone to the building.
It just seems like almost like a warehouse with it all gray. It's kind of like the Chase Bank that's up on the corner of Main Street and Azalea shopping entrance. They have like beige and different colors that blend well, but it also accents the building and makes it look more, I don't know, prettier, I guess. I'm not real crazy over this, but if this is what y'all had talked about at the last meeting that I didn't attend, then, I'm not gonna screw with it.
But we're happy to
Carolyn,
study
last
the
time
brick
it
selection
was
further.
Caroline, last time it was just for conceptual as well.
I
So
see.
you didn't, I think you were well within your role if you have any comments to make them. It was conceptual last time, and they've responded to some of the comments, and so they're kind of back before us again.
Where is the brick going that you were speaking of, the gray brick?
So Tim, maybe you could demonstrate it with the cursor, but the entire right side of the building, which is actually longer, you can see it better in the bottom rendering. All of that lower portion of the building is brick.
Okay.
And then on the wood portion of the building, just the base of it is brick.
Okay. Do y'all like the one color? I don't, but just.
Well, I can jump in on that. Because the texture will be so much different, the brick hasn't been selected yet. And so in the rendering, and correct me if I'm wrong, David, but in the rendering, I believe that they look more similar than they would in actuality.
Chris, I'd say that's true. We've used this wood siding on a building in Mount Pleasant before, and it's a gray penetrating stain, but there is still a lot of warmth to the wood in reality. The brick has not been selected, and so I have samples of the wood in my office. I think as we press forward towards finalizing things, we can start to collect some brick samples and select the correct brick. I think another way we could address this would be to consider a slightly different tone for the water table base than what we have above. I don't want to get into one of these buildings that has an abundance of materials and becomes too fussy. But I think if we play within all the same tones, we could get some variety. And I do believe that the textures will go a long way in reality.
Okay. And we have to approve the colors too. Where would we look at those samples of the brick and everything?
If I'm not mistaken, and Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, this is preliminary and we would have one more hearing after this. Is that true?
David, that's correct. This is preliminary approval, so you would be coming back for final in the future. And typically that is where the final material samples are provided to the board for review and comment. Hopefully it would have been narrowed down to the tones and the colors that you're looking for today. Say bring us a sample of the gray and maybe something else or whatever the case may be, but final is where they would actually have the material samples because they're choosing what they intend to use as part of the design.
Will we view those on Zoom, or will we be able to go somewhere and see the actual brick?
Maybe you'll be able to come on in. It'll depend on town council and how they choose to move forward with our public meetings. If we stay on the Zoom meetings and doing it this way, maybe we can work something out where the applicant can potentially bring some samples into my office and you guys can swing by as you like, one at a time to view those materials and, at least have an idea before the vote so that we know which one is preferred.
Okay,
I'd be happy to do that. It would also be a good opportunity where we could leave printed renderings behind where we know we're controlling the colors, because I'm sure everybody's screen looks a little bit different. And
Right.
who knows what it looks like when it got printed, output wise for everybody. So I think that'll be a much better indication of the true colors, and we're happy to do that.
And I think Magnolia Square is just a combination of different grays, right? Tim?
I think they have some blue there as well, but it's predominantly gray.
The street view that I pulled, they were actually still under construction. But yes, there is a lot of gray. They pulled this gray shingled mansard off the front here on this particular unit. But yes, the grays are kind of the contemporary look right now. It seems like a lot of the architects, not questioning it, but seems to be the style, and the gray tones are coming in for a lot of buildings right now at this point.
Okay. Well, and like even the vertical shiplap siding, it'll have to have some trim like at the corners and that. So I think because you wouldn't have an outside corner that didn't, unless it doesn't. But anyway, I think that as we get a little bit further, look at actual materials and so on, and it probably should warm up a little bit. But I think the problem before was that it was like super, well, I wouldn't say super contemporary because we can go super contemporary, but it's contemporary plus all gray, which made it a little bit more stark than it looks right now. So anyway, I'm trying to kind of help explain why renderings are complicated in a sense, because your brick in a rendering is probably more likely to look like painted brick until you know exactly what kind of brick you're going to pick. And so we'll just look, I think if it goes forward today, I think we just look forward to seeing some material samples somewhere or be directed in that direction to kind of get a final thought on what it's really going to look like.
That
Oh.
sounds good.
Okay.
All right. My comments, I think I am going to I want to be open-minded about it. I think it is better than it was before. I think it's a little simple, a little overly simple at I guess at the eave, towards the top of the building. I don't think I've ever suggested build a big house like was said earlier, but I do think that for me, it does not quite fit in with the neighborhood. I was looking on Google Maps while we were talking, and you got a house behind it, a house next to it, a house across the street. I think the only place, not only place, but this might work in this particular lot on Magnolia because it's got the context of Magnolia Square diagonally across the street. I think the issue I have with it is the roof line is flat. It's a flat roof. And I think that a sloped roof actually looks more appropriate on Magnolia. And I think that is the big architectural issue I have with it is this seems like it should be on Main Street, not Magnolia Street. And I know it's just one block, but contextually there's a difference. So, I think if it was, heck, you can keep the same general footprint. But if it had a sloped roof, I think it would fit in more. So that's my thoughts architecturally. I think as is, I think the windows are a little plain and it could be the rendering. I think the rendering is working out a little bit of a disadvantage because, as Carolyn said, it's hard to see exactly what the material is. And that's hard for me to imagine how the corners of this wood siding stuff are coming together because I'm just honestly not familiar with the material in this context. So I think that's holding me back a little bit. And so I think the biggest thing for me is probably the roof type. Do you have any thoughts on that, or you just want to keep on going, David?
Yeah, I do. I think that there's a scale issue to a gable or a hip roof, that this building's just big enough where it makes me a little bit uncomfortable if that's what starts to lean towards the big house. I think there's some practical issues that come along with it as well, where accommodating HVAC units, we get into complicated roof wells, everything can be done, but I think this is a more straightforward and appropriate for this building type. I do think that there's detailing to be finished for cornices, parapet, and all of that to be presented at final. I also think we can continue to study the articulation of the parapet on the brick portion especially. But it just doesn't strike me as the right response to put a pitched roof on this building with this footprint.
All right, thank you for that. I think as a board, and this is just one person's opinion, you have all different voices, but if this building type starts to march down Magnolia, I think we will have lost the history of this area. So that's maybe that's something we need to study through the UDO or whatever, but context is important. So but anyway, that's enough about that. Site plan wise, I echo, I think, staff's comments with the sidewalks. I don't really have issue with the parking. And what else? Appreciate the consideration of the tree in the back. I still think it's too close. And I have very serious concerns about the site plan in that if there is no parking place back there, you have to back up at an angle. Sounds like there might be a tree and a tree well. And it's very difficult to do in almost any vehicle, especially the trucks and Yukons of the world, and heck, anything. It's going to be hard to back up if you can't find a spot. So I would support, although it would cut down on your square footage, and I realize the implications of that, a loop, even if it's a one-way alley that cuts back over to Magnolia through the parking lot. I would lose a couple of parking places as well. So anyway, are there any other staff comments or DRB comments? David, or do you or any of your team have anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think we are satisfied with what we presented. I think it's only going to continue to get better. Appreciate the opportunity.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, so would someone like to make a motion? And they're asking for preliminary approval.
I recommend granting preliminary approval with comments of staff
Okay.
and comments of the board taken into consideration for the next presentation.
I'll second that.
All righty. Since Carolyn seconded it. Any further discussion?
I think that,
All right.
hey, Chris.
Yep.
I think that part of the comments should just reflect some further detailed study of the cornice, the coping, and the details on the vertical wood siding. Just, I mean, they're details that you would do for a final, approval anyway, but just want to make sure that we know that we are trying to get a little bit more detail out of this for the purposes of just keeping it from being super flat all the way around.
So Chris, just to clarify, you recommended as one of the comments more study on the coping, parapet, and what was you? I think you mentioned three things.
The coping and the parapet are pretty much cornice that are pretty much the same on this building.
Yes.
So definitely study on that, and possibly just make it a little bit more three-dimensional. And then I would also recommend a little bit of study on the vertical wood section. I'm not going to direct that necessarily, but if people are concerned about how flat and simple it is, that might be able to be addressed with some creative trim work, either with hardy or similar material to the field color or the field material.
How about if it were a board and batten versus shiplap?
I don't mind the gray the boards that go up and down all the way, but it seems like the roof line could be maybe at each tenant's place could be, extended up or brought down, or with some variations like you were saying.
So I think what we're saying is we like the simplicity, but we want you to change it a little. But
I don't like simplicity.
I think, am I wrong, Carolyn?
I'm not crazy over the simplicity. I think that it's too simple.
Okay. And so that
I
might
think if it's to me, if the massing is, I'm torn on this. I would rely on you guys more, but if the massing is it's an old kind of small town brick building, then the details need to be more reflective of that. And I think it's kind of caught somewhere in between where it's trying to be somewhat contemporary, but the masking, the detailing is, I don't know, it seems a little lacking, and it could be the rendering again. So I think to me, it's not quite there.
Right, and some study on like more traditional and contemporary can be done on the same building. So maybe a study just approval based on the height, scale, mass, and general look with further research and study on particularly the brick detailing. How about that?
Okay, that's good.
All right, any further discussion? So, all right, there's a motion on the table with conditions for preliminary approval. So we're ready to call for the vote. And I'm going to do a roll call vote, if you don't mind. Bill?
Aye.
All right, I'm next alphabetically. I'm opposed. Mr. Carpus?
Aye.
Carolyn?
Yes, with the comments that we've made.
Sure. And Hart and Candace are still not with us, correct? Okay. So that's it. It's a 3-to-1 for preliminary approval with conditions.
All right,
Thanks,
excellent.
everybody.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
All righty, Tim, you're up, buddy.
All right, let me get to the next item on the agenda, which is a request for preliminary approval for a proposed 3,010 square foot restaurant with a drive-through, which is Freddy's Frozen Custard and Steak Burgers. The property is zoned UCMX, which is Urban Corridor Mixed Use. It is located on Ladson Road at the Ladson Oakbrook Shopping Center out parcel. This was last at DRB September 17th, where preliminary approval was denied. Staff's comments are to address prior comments. They have added the sidewalk connection to Ladson Road. The photometric plan has been submitted, but the average permitted foot candles exceeds the limit established in section 9.3.3. They are proposing, I think it was 3.9, give or take, or 3.6. Cannot exceed 3. Once again, the building provides a mix of materials, including brick and fiber cement siding, both horizontal and vertical board and batten. The proposed elevation does not meet the 65% facade transparency on the first floor, and this requirement can be waived by the board. So I'm going to scroll through here. I think the landscape plan might be a better plan to address. They did address the trees in the landscaped islands. The sidewalk connection is here to the existing sidewalk on Ladson Road. And I will turn it over at this point to the board and or the applicant and let them run with it at this point.
Hello, this is
seems like
Chad Billings. Hello, this is Chad Billings with KW Commercial. I wanted to thank the board first for meeting with us again on this particular project. We tried to take a lot of the comments that came out of the last meeting to go with an untraditional location for Freddy's Frozen Custard. One of the important things to note is that their traditional buildings are out of a nostalgia, so they go with their branding and marketing. We did have to try and stay within those guidelines from a coloration standpoint, but went away from almost a 180-degree turn from a traditional wedding cake design with traditional stucco and ephes. We increased the amount of brick coverage on the outside of this building, changed both of the ephes and stucco structure on the outside based off of the comments on one building that exists in their portfolio out of Carmel, Illinois. And that particular building, to shed some light, was actually a non-renovated building. It was already existing that a previous tenant had taken over for Freddy's. And with that, some of the important things to note, and I know one of the comments that came out of the last meeting was regarding the awnings. We tried to lessen the lettering on the outside of the building We took away the lighting in the red aspect. Also, we changed the coping on the top to red versus the neon lighting that is a traditional call out for their design to try and soften that light touch. We did add some extra one section of extra windows and doors to the outside of the main two entrances on this soft corner to the shopping center, and then shifted that focal attention based off of some of the other UDA guidelines for corner directional to a towered fixture on the corner entrances to try and bring a little bit more modern touch and feel with those outside surfaces. So we hope that you understand where we went with this, but at the same note that a lot of the materials and design of this speaks to the brand specific from Freddy's, and that is the coloration on the awnings, bringing back the 50s diner type feel that ties into their marketing and branding. So it's not a one-off for this location. It's part of a lot of their, I would say 99% of their facilities are in this coloration scheme with the red and white awnings and the red lettering, much like you would see a McDonald's arch being yellow, or former Blockbusters with their blue and their blue awnings down that same light. So again, I appreciate your time and effort, and look forward to your feedback.
So does anyone else on your team want to speak about site or architectural at all?
This is Mike Lucas. We're the CSS, we're the civil engineers for the project. In regards to the, I guess, remaining site comments, we will get the photometric plan revised to reflect the 3-foot candle maximum. That won't be an issue. And I guess any other, I think that was the only remaining site comment that we saw. If there are any other questions regarding the site, we'd be happy to answer those.
Alrighty, thank you. Anyone else on your side that has anything to add? And you get an opportunity to speak later. It's just asking. Alrighty. Tim, I actually would have a question for you to start. They mentioned that they have to have a corner because, a tower element, and that they related it to the corner for the UDO. My understanding is they're not required to have a tower on the corner, are they?
No, it's not a specific requirement in this particular location. The accenting the corner is for like the last property, where it's actually the corner of two streets and intersection. I think what they're doing is accenting the building corner to give some variation, as they said, moving away from that the traditional, as he said, birthday cake style, where it's just kind of stacked vertical box. This kind of gives a variation to the height of the building at a couple different places. So it may have been a minor misinterpretation, maybe based on what they had heard from our last meeting we were discussing the old Sticky Fingers building, and we were discussing that corner, Magnolia Street here today, and accenting the corner. So not that it's wrong and they can't do it, but yes, Chris, you are correct. It is not specifically required.
Okay. And then as far as landscape plans go, with this new UDO, are they still required to have trees at the ends of parking lots, like an end island?
It is the way that the UDO works is instead of mandating trees in random locations, which, a tree every 12 parking spaces or 7 or whatever the case may be, really doesn't always end up with the appropriate spacing. The intent with the redesign to the landscape requirements in the UDO was to provide an opportunity to actually create some canopy cover and to give the trees appropriate space to be able to spread. So, and I don't know how well it can be seen on this at that prior Zoom, but you can see here the 60-foot circle that they've drawn around the canopy trees, both on these two islands here. And what they're designed to do is to create an overlap to provide an actual canopy. As the tree grows, they can grow together and actually provide some of that cover and that shade, as opposed to, like I said previously, mandating randomly placed trees.
Alrighty. Bill, would you like to get us started?
Yeah, I kind of like the corner element. That had some interest to the building. It is what it is. It's a fast food restaurant. They've altered the materials to be, I think, better. Got rid of the stucco, so I'm okay with it.
All right, Mr. Karpus.
Hey, Tim, can you go back to the color elevation?
Yes, sir. Do you want the elevation or the rendering?
The rendering. Sorry.
No problem. Just want to make sure I give you what you want.
I actually agree with Bill in that I didn't mean to make that sound like it's uncommon, but anyway, I like the corner element a little higher. I'm actually not even really bothered by the cone because it is nostalgic and it actually makes you realize how nostalgic it is when you see it. But the only thing I'm not a fan of is I'm not a fan of the awnings, but I understand the corporate identity and that kind of thing. I think what I would like to see is a more traditional approach to the columns and awnings working together, where you have a column capital and the awning is outside of the column capital. Right now it looks like everything's just kind of flush, and so more like a roof over a column with some detail at the top of the column with the capital, and the roofs, that canopy just being in excess of the area of the column. So just an overlap somehow, or overhang, sorry, of the top of those column capitals.
And maybe reduce the size of those columns, which we talked about last time.
Yeah, I think it was the piers the last time, the pilasters. I get why there are 3 columns on that side because the width is such that it kind of, you want to go about half. If you did reduce the size of those columns, I would divide that space into 3 instead of 2. I think one thing I remember somebody teaching me a long time ago is never cut anything in half. And I guess this person didn't like symmetry, but if you do reduce those columns, I would add 1 in there just to give it a little bit of rhythm. But that would be my main comment, is that the capital, it's just some more detail on the capital or a capital for the columns and an overhang over that.
Well, already got a couple of comments architecturally. I'm not a fan of the corner because it's like, for a while there, it seems like every drugstore you can think of had a corner that was taller, and it's just, it doesn't really seem to serve a purpose. I like it better, in the center, if that was the wedding cake or whatever the term was. I think it's distracting as it is. The ice cream cone, I don't mind it at all. I like the nostalgia of little kind of gimmicky stuff like that, which is great. I'm just looking at one in Johnston City that looks a lot better than this one. I'm looking at another one, can't tell where it is right now, but well, they're hiring. Yeah, the one on Carmel Street looks better than this one. So it's to me, it's not there. I know the corporate identity claimed, but it doesn't look good. To me, I think it catches your eye, that's for sure, but it adds to me up to visual clutter going down this street. I think the brick columns are not quite proportioned correctly. The one, I think they should be thinner. I think maybe both Bill and Carpus may have said it, but it's not detailed. It's just a brick box, brick rectangle on the columns. The coloring of the one in Carmel is a little bit better. Maybe it's the rendering. It's got a brown brick that's kind of mottled. The awnings are better in that it's a true shed roof awning rather than how these awnings, they almost look dated, like the way they turn or go around the column. It's not quite detailed enough. Maybe it should be just kind of a straight pitch like the one in Carmel with brackets that come out and support it. To me, I'm being pretty critical here, but there's this building, there's nothing I can grab onto that I like, so it's hard for me to get there. I've seen, like I said, other examples on the website that are better. So I think this kind of takes away from the street. So I think it generally needs to be restudied. Site-wise, I think that it doesn't feel like it was really designed. It feels like it was just meeting requirements. The front buffer, I think, is lacking. The side buffers don't really relate to what's going on in the parking lot. On the upper right, there's just kind of a random sod area that's not engaged. The patio underneath the canopy is not engaged. I think pistachios are not an appropriate tree for this area, and they're not going to get to the 60 feet diameter that Tim talked about. The Bosque elms are kind of small. So I think you need to probably consult with someone that's got a local plant palette and improve the planting. It doesn't look like it was designed. It looks like it was just an engineered planting plan. So I guess that's my 2 cents. Carolyn, did you have anything?
I did. Can you go back to the rendering, I guess, with the picture? I think if it had more brick, it would look okay. I don't have a problem really with the tower in the corner there if the brick came to the tower on each side. And then that would add more brick and make it look more substantial. And I also agree with all of the things y'all said about that awning on the front. It needs 3 columns and much smaller columns, and to be integrated better than that. That's my comments.
All right. Any other comments from the board as site-wise, or any clarification or anything on the board's behalf? Bill, you have anything?
I'm a little bit confused about the new landscape requirements because buffers are not required between like uses. So Tim, is any landscaping required, period? Other than islands?
Sorry, I was muted. They are, I'm trying to get back there. I apologize. They actually are providing some of that landscaping between the uses. I mean, this existing shopping center is kind of devoid of anything other than, I mean, this is currently like a lawn area, but there isn't a single tree in there. So they, because it is a larger common area,
Well, I'm glad they're putting the trees in, but those buffers are actually not required, are they? Other than
not,
along the right of way.
yeah, not specifically, not like the old ordinance where, you know, there was a minimum 10-foot buffer at the front that had some more detailed. They are providing this hedgerow along the front. I think they listened when we let them know about that aspect of it, helping to provide some visual buffer of the asphalt that runs along the front here. You know, with UCMX, the drive-through window and ordering window are prohibited from being on the front of the building. You know, a lot of them, a lot of fast food restaurants, with the way that they circulate their lots, will turn the building this way and they will have it here. They like corner lots oftentimes, and this has been problematic because they're not supposed to be facing the right of way and have their stacking adjacent to that. So this one's actually meeting the intent of that, those requirements. They have their stacking in the back. They have their delivery window on the side. This is all per the ordinance, and I don't know if I specifically answered your question.
They meet the 60-foot radius requirement for
Yes, sir.
trees.
And the board can still require more landscaping or have it be designed or, you know, whatever. It doesn't mean they go to the minimum and stop.
Well, actually,
Yes.
they've exceeded it.
I mean, along here, they have definitely added to that border edge. I don't know what the depth of this is. I think they're providing at least 5 feet along those borders. With these shared property lines, they're technically, so it can straddle it, and it would only be required to be a minimum 4 foot. I think they've provided the 5 around the entire edge here to meet their minimum requirement, with a little extra because it's, you know, just appropriate planting areas.
All right. Any further comments from the board, or are you ready to make a motion?
Oh, I actually have another comment. Sorry. You know, I was thinking about the whole corporate identity thing with the canopies, and it seems to me that this isn't meant to sound sarcastic, but the Freddy sign and the big ice cream cone probably will connect it pretty well architecturally. Is there any way we could be looking at just a standing seam, more traditional low country porch kind of concept there, rather than the kind of wrapped vinyl awning? I mean, that's like the one thing that you could really tie it in with the low country by considering a more traditional cover for that seating area. You know, just a standing seam. I mean, red wouldn't bother me, but just something more. I'm not trying to say make it look residential, but there are plenty of commercial applications of covered areas that are more reflective of the low country. And so that I would suggest that, and be looking at standing seam for some of those areas. It doesn't seem like you'd be losing much from that, and you'd be gaining a lot by connecting it with other traditional low country porches or covered areas.
I mean, I would echo that. I think I like the nostalgia of the Freddy's and the icon like old diner, but it needs to be like an old ice cream shop or old diner that is from here, not from anywhere USA. And I think they can blend what they're wanting to achieve with local architecture and local materials. So if it's a standing seam metal roof and, some of these other elements, I think it's achievable. I just don't think it's there yet. All right. Does the applicant have anything else they'd like to say before we call for the motion?
No.
Alrighty. Okay. So we need to. Is there a motion for this agenda item?
I would recommend approval based on the tower becoming brick. Don't delete brick anywhere else, but just make the tower brick. And then follow the more traditional design for the porch with the standing seam metal and smaller columns, which would be 4 columns, smaller columns instead of the 3 large ones. And then the awnings on the other elevations make them the same material, the standing seam material.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right. I'm going to call for the vote. I am opposed. Bill, I assume you're in favor.
I'm in favor.
Yep. And Mr. Karpus?
I'm in favor of that as Bill suggested.
Okay. And then Carolyn?
I'm in favor of it as the comments that were made by Bill.
All right. So there you have it. It's 3-1. Appreciate you all coming by, and we're ready for the next applicant.
Okay. First item under new business is a request for final approval for the ability to place a shipping container on the property at 1706 Old Trolley Road. As I detailed in the staff report, the Sherwin-Williams store is experiencing a boom in their business, and they need to keep more stock on site to be able to meet the needs of the construction that's going on in the area. They have asked the property owner if they have the ability to get a shipping container to be placed on the property, and wanted to note that where they proposed to place the shipping container is within the required buffer. But my recommendation was that if they can fit it here without the removal of any trees, that staff would be okay with it for a limited amount of time. So obviously it is up to the DRB to make that decision whether or not to allow this, but and you can obviously condition that approval as noted for a certain period of time. You've done this before with office trailers and other various things along those lines. So I'm not sure if the applicant is on. I believe his name was George Sarkis. Is George on the? If you'd like to address the board concerning the proposal here, I'd be happy to turn it over to you.
Hey, George.
The only person I see that's just looking at the little scrolling down the people that are on is someone named Nick Maylander. So I don't see a George.
I can't speak for George. I know he did receive the invite. So you guys could table it with him not here to discuss the proposal. You move it forward if you'd like. I mean, it is at your discretion.
Tim, sorry if I missed it. Did they indicate how long they would want it to be there?
The application was for 2 years. Is what they originally requested in the conversation I had with him concerning that. Let's see if I can. The applicant has requested a 2-year approval.
Well, I mean, right off the bat, I'm not in favor of that.
Maybe 2 months.
You know? Yeah, I was thinking 60 or 90 days. And could you remind me what's behind them? What's their common property line?
This is the Brook Towers apartment here.
Retirement kind of.
Yeah. And we've actually been in conversations with them about potential small addition or something along those lines, and some landscaping enhancements along these drives on this property. So the storage container would be back here behind the building. And I mean, I think you can see from the street view with this bubble out, if it's back here, I mean, if you're doing the normal speed on this street, it's not going to be highly visible. But I didn't object to it as long as they didn't have to remove any of the existing landscaping. Since they're not here to discuss what would be needed to get it on there, I mean, I guess we could just do as you please.
Maybe we should just approve it for 6 months. And if they don't show up the next time, then we.
Well, my concern is
every 6 months.
My concern is there's probably a lot of shrubs and stuff that is not there. I mean, would be taken out and not be there anymore. And I have a concern for the residents behind it, because it looks like there's a 6-foot fence, maybe. And I think those containers are, what, at least 10 feet tall. I think my recommendation would be to deny it or table it. And that's just me.
My recommendation is in the past, just to remind you guys, in the past when we've had applicants not show up, either not able to make it to the meeting, or in this case not be able to log in, or whatever is preventing him from being here, is you've tabled their request to the following meeting to give them an opportunity to actually address the board.
That's fine with me. What's everyone else think?
That's fine.
They can take a photograph of where they're going to put it to show the actual conditions. So we can be satisfied they're not going to take anything out.
I agree to table it.
Alrighty. Okay. Tim, do we need to make a motion to table it, or we just table it?
Yes, we do need a motion to do that.
I move that we table this discussion until the next meeting.
And Bill, looks like you're giving it a second.
Oh yeah, second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I guess we should have roll call, but any opposed? All righty. So unanimous motion or approval to table.
Yes, sir.
All right. Tim, what else? What's next?
All right. Well, I had discussed with a number of the board members the possibility of doing a small workshop, maybe just a discussion on our mixed use zoning that was introduced with the passage of the UDO in October of last year. So what I did, or what I included in your packets for all of you to be able to have, hopefully you can keep this packet, maybe just snip out these sections, but these are the downtown DMX zoning, which would include Magnolia Street, some of it's on Gum Street and over to Cedar and some on Pine. Just kind of showing what that is, as well as our urban corridor mixed use zoning, which is in primarily, high concentration in our Oak Brook area, as well as, all of Old Trolley, lots of Ladson. So think about the project, the Caliber Collision that you guys approved earlier this year, I think it was, that's along here. All of the stuff that's been coming in on Trolley Road, most of the stuff that fronts down here on Dorchester. So what I did is I provided you guys with the district standards for those mixed use zoning categories: neighborhood mixed use, downtown mixed use, urban corridor mixed use, and neighborhood residential, which we really don't see a lot of that coming through the DRB. The UDO, I know some of you really were interested in getting some copies of that, so I wanted to make sure that you had at least the files available to you guys to read and know exactly what it is that we're discussing when we're talking about it. Additionally, I included the Chapter 4 site building design guidelines, which these are where a lot of my comments are coming from, and as well as to where you guys should be bringing your comments. Now, obviously, you are still responsible for making sure that stuff fits in contextually, and talking about what's appropriate. Is it low country? The applicability right here is the guidelines and standards in this chapter apply to all buildings and sites, with the exceptions noted herein, to help the town staff and or design review board as appropriate evaluate applications. These are what we should be using to address a lot of the things that come before the board. The purpose really does point, and hopefully architects take note of this, because that's going to tell them how to, where to start their design aesthetic from, as opposed to doing it and trying to reverse engineer something that is going to fit into the South Carolina low country. So I've provided these for you. I was hoping to have a little bit of a open discussion. If you guys had any questions, comments, concerns, whatever the case may be. To address the DMX section and maybe some of the discussions that were had during those the UDO discussion with town council, as well as our consultant as we were bringing this through, and as we assigned this zoning to some of those areas. Part of the idea was to provide an avenue to allow for the type of development that had traditionally occurred in downtown, buildings at the sidewalk, hopefully big sidewalks that allow people to circulate through, open windows, that 65% opacity requirement, and really kind of induce the type of development that everybody loves. Everybody goes, "Oh, I love Little Maine," "Oh, it's amazing." Those are the opportunities that hopefully we would be able to bring, and expand our downtown, as opposed to just having one block of Little Maine. Potentially draw that over along Richardson, maybe up Magnolia, up Cedar. I think we've seen the opportunity with the office building on Cedar Street. We have CPW that got approved, as well as the one that you just recently approved, and they are starting construction on Cedar, to kind of change the streetscape. And it was the intent. Obviously, we need to take the context of where it's going. And I think we're going to have to weigh and balance this as we go forward with these pioneer projects that are in these near in residential neighborhoods that have the opportunity to kind of change the nature of what's going on there. So as I said, we can spur a conversation, maybe give you guys an opportunity to take these materials today, or over the next week or month, or whatever the case may be. If you don't want to have that discussion right now, because you're not necessarily prepared, we can do that. But I did want to let you know that we'd love to have that conversation with you guys, so that you understand what the intent was, so that we're all traveling in the same direction on the same road, as opposed to sometimes taking them in different routes. So I'll let you guys discuss if that's what you'd like to do, or I'm going to turn it over to the board at this point.
Well, for me, I think I need to study it a little bit more and just look at it harder. Not that I haven't already, but my question is, if the applicant that was on Magnolia, the one that came by today, would that look appropriate down there by Bart Sabine's office? Where it's got those, I don't know, what is it, 3 or 4 buildings that are almost Victorian, that are tall, that look residential. Would that Magnolia Street property we saw today, would that look appropriate there? For me, it doesn't. So I think it could kind of where it is, maybe just because of Magnolia Square, but I don't think it would look good going past that. So curious to see what you guys think.
I think Magnolia Street is going to change drastically. It's no longer a fit place for residential, and that it needs to go become more urban than Sabine's office. Although Sabine's office is very nice and it's appropriate, but I think the neighborhood needs to change and go become more urban and commercial, which is the purpose of the UDO in that area. I think the reason for that zoning.
Okay.
The DMX zoning.
DMX.
The
Downtown.
The flat roof didn't bother me as much as there was no ornamentation of any kind. We got flat roofs on Little Maine, and it's beautiful. But it almost looked industrial to me, that Magnolia property. So I don't think it really reflected Somerville's designs.
What helped the Magnolia project was Magnolia Square. And it definitely needed more detail, and hopefully he'll take that into consideration with that as a stipulation with or board suggestion with the approval that he got. I don't think I think that when something is contextual, you always have to look at the context and say, okay, you don't want to think of something contextual as finding the least common denominator and going with that. So, but I do think that that project probably wouldn't look great in a whole lot of other places, except maybe on Main Street. But I also know that we're looking at a rendering that was done with a particular style, and I'm hoping that once the landscaping and the materials and the details are worked out, that'll soften up a lot. But anyway, it's not necessarily something that I would put everywhere, but it does connect loosely with Magnolia Square.
Well, and I don't think the intent was to rehash the Magnolia Street project per se. I know it's the most recent item that was on our on our minds, obviously, and I appreciate Chris's comment that he felt he needed a little bit more time to kind of look at the documents and evaluate them and formulate some questions. Does everybody else feel that way? I mean, I threw this in and because I know that there were some questions and from people outside of the board, and I don't want opportunities squandered to provide an avenue for what people like in downtown to expand. Everybody loves downtown, but it's literally a block. It's not huge, and we are growing very quickly. And I think the design guidelines and the UDO give us an opportunity not to change things, but to pull the things that are beneficial and the things that people identify with the town of Somerville and maybe expand it, make it a little bit bigger, give more opportunities to the corridors that are adjacent to Main Street and allow them to be developed, kind of in a similar fashion. So does anybody else have any comments?
I don't have any at this time.
Okay.
And I need to look through it a little bit more too, but are we just looking to find common ground on the guidelines and an approach to what we say to applicants? We can't change anything about the UDO, right?
No, I'm not looking for edits or suggestions or changes along those lines. What I wanted to do is give you guys the opportunity to discuss and maybe find a common lane to get into, and also give you the materials that you need to ground your comments in the design guidelines, in the ordinance, so that when it's not completely subjective, that there is some ground to stand on when you say, you're looking at these, your windows, we do have a 65% transparency requirement. We want people to feel like these are open buildings. Historically, those storefront windows allowed people to see in. They were display areas, and it makes it feel inviting. Closed off solid slab walls, even if they have small windows in them, don't feel as open and inviting as the historic style. We're not expecting everybody to mimic a historic downtown, but by setting the floor, we give the opportunity to get something that is, I don't want it to be Mickey Mouse, so to speak. We don't want it to be an imitation of, but we want it to be something that's authentic and is meeting these design guidelines, and implementing kind of a vision that a lot of people really thought was a good idea when we were working on the UDO for all of those years.
Well, I think the UDO is a benefit to the design review board, but also can be a problem in that it gives you, for stuff that just doesn't meet it, you could say that this doesn't meet the UDO. Excuse me. For stuff that does meet it, but we don't like, it just doesn't look good. It confuses applicants, and so I appreciate the opportunity to look it over and try to find a common ground, because there's not, I don't think there's anything in there that says no gray brick, or you know what I mean. And so it makes it a little bit harder to approve or disapprove of something, depending on the situation. There was plenty of architectural feedback on the UDO prior to its approval. So anyway, I'd like to look it over a little more too.
Okay. I could leave this on the agenda. If we have a short agenda, we can have a more in-depth conversation. If you guys have some specific questions, submit them beforehand. I can come prepared to answer those questions and address those directly. Like I said, I wanted to give you guys the opportunity to have this in hand as we discussed things, and hopefully get an idea for the direction. And like I said, ground your comments in the ordinance. We don't want to take the subjectivity away completely, but we don't want, I just don't like it. that comment is hard for applicants to hear. And I know that is where a lot of things come from. You guys understand the town. And sometimes these outside applicants don't understand that aspect of it. They don't understand what low country design means. It is kind of a nebulous concept. And if you can direct them with some specifics, that's helpful. I think.
But Tim, they don't even try.
Well,
not everyone. It's not a blanket statement, but they don't even try to understand what is low country architecture. And recent applicants over the last couple of years don't necessarily even bring an architect to the meeting. So we're having architectural concerns, but you have the realtor talking. And not to take anything away from realtors, but they don't even know what we're talking about. And they said, oh, all right, they wanted to make it brick.
Yeah, or the civil
whatever.
engineer, or whatever.
Yeah.
I understand exactly what you're saying, and I don't disagree with you. And it is difficult, and you guys do have a difficult position to do that. And I think you guys have done a great job over the years communicating that. We've had some hits and some misses, but like I said, this is an opportunity. I provided this information for you, so number one, where these areas are, where the UCMX is, where the DMX is. These are going to be the areas, and we're seeing a lot of activity, both in infill development and redevelopment of sites. And they're going to be coming through here soon. So that is why the design guidelines and the UDO sections, I gave these to you for your use. So do with them as you will. Like I said, I'm more than happy to continue talking about it if you guys are good with the time that we've spent, and if I've communicated enough about what the intent was and the information I provided you, we can wrap up. Please, drive the bus here. I'm happy to go with you.
I think
I'm
we
open
ought
to whatever y'all want to do.
I think we ought to talk in depth when we can meet face to face again.
It'll be a lot better. Yeah.
That's fair.
Got the literature here, and I've got a copy of it anyway, and I've been learning it slowly but surely. But we'll just keep working on it, and we do need to not confuse applicants by contradicting what the UDO is telling them. So we need to be aware of that. But I think we can discuss it in depth, and we keep on working on it when we can meet again normally.
Yeah, I think I'm cool with that. And I think we're all doing the best we can, staff and all of us board members, we're doing the best we can and trying to do the right thing. It's just challenging at times.
Yeah, and I'm still learning it too. I mean, I work with it. I'm still trying to figure out how it applies in certain instances. And I hope I'm doing a better job communicating it to you in the staff reports and things like that. And if there's something lacking, let me know. If you need more information on something, if you guys see something when the packet comes out and you say, what do you mean by that? Or did you think about this? Shoot me an email. I'm here to provide support to you guys.
We appreciate it.
I really appreciate, I appreciate that too. And I really appreciate how you have been kind of making an intro on the project at the beginning. For one, it kind of gets us up to speed on context and where it is and all that stuff, but it also is a good segue because, as long as we do these Zoom meetings, that is challenging having a smooth meeting too. So I appreciate your efforts.
Thank you. I
All
appreciate
right.
that.
Yep. Okay. Anyone like to make a motion for ending the meeting?
I'll make a motion that we end the meeting.
All right. All those in favor, say aye or just close out.
All right.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all. You have a good night.